In the mist-shrouded mountains of medieval Japan, a warrior class emerged that would define an empire and captivate the world's imagination. For centuries to come, these were the samurai men bound by an unbreakable code, wielding both sword and brush, living and dying by principles that transcended the mere art of war. The story of the samurai begins in the Heian period, around the 9th century, when Japan's imperial court in Kyoto required military protection. Local landowners began hiring warriors to defend their estates from bandits and rival clans. These early fighters were horsemen and archers, skilled in combat, but not yet the refined warriors they would become. As central authority weakened, these mounted warriors grew in power and prestige, gradually transforming from hired guards into a distinct social class with its own identity and values. By the 12th century, two powerful samurai clans dominated Japan, the Minamoto and the Taira. Their rivalry culminated in the Genpei War, a brutal 5-year conflict that would reshape Japanese society forever. When Minamoto no Tomoe emerged victorious in 1185, he established the Kamakura shogunate, creating a military government that placed samurai at the pinnacle of Japanese society. The emperor remained in Kyoto as a symbolic figurehead, but real power now rested with the shogun and his samurai administrators. This shift marked the beginning of what historians call the feudal period in Japan, though the reality was far more complex than simple European feudalism. The samurai became not just warriors, but administrators, tax collectors, and landholders. They served their daimyo, or feudal lords, who in turn pledged allegiance to the shogun. This hierarchical system created a web of loyalty and obligation that would define Japanese politics. For the next 7 centuries, what truly set the samurai apart, however, was not their political power but their philosophy. Over generations, they developed Bushido, the way of the warrior, an unwritten code that governed every aspect of samurai life. Bushido emphasized loyalty above all else, but also courage, honor, honesty, and self-discipline. A samurai was expected to face death without hesitation, to keep his word absolutely, and to maintain his dignity in all circumstances. This code drew heavily from Zen Buddhism, which taught detachment from worldly concerns and acceptance of mortality, and from Confucianism, which stressed duty and social hierarchy. The training of a samurai began in childhood. Young boys from samurai families learned horsemanship, archery, swordsmanship, and martial arts. They studied calligraphy, poetry, and tea ceremony. A true samurai was expected to be both warrior and scholar, capable of composing an elegant poem one moment and engaging in mortal combat the next. This duality, the marriage of martial prowess and cultural refinement, became the ideal that all samurai aspired to embody. The samurai's most iconic weapon was the katana, a curved steel sword that represented both his soul and his status. The process of forging a katana was itself a sacred art. Master swordsmiths would fold steel thousands of times, creating layers that gave the blade its legendary strength and flexibility. A properly made katana could cut through armor and bone, yet was light enough for swift, precise movements. The samurai wore to swords the longer katana and the shorter wakizashi, together called daisho, meaning big little. Only samurai were permitted to wear both swords, making them an instant mark of status and authority. But samurai were not invincible supermen, as romantic legends sometimes suggest. They were mortal warriors in a violent age, and their history is written in blood. The Sengoku period, from the late 15th to late 16th century, was an era of almost constant warfare. This age of warring states saw daimyo across Japan fighting for supremacy, and samurai armies clashed in battles involving tens of thousands of warriors. It was a time of strategic brilliance and terrible carnage, when loyalty was often betrayed and entire clans could be wiped out overnight. During this period, 3 great leaders emerged who would eventually unify Japan. Oda Nobunaga was a brilliant and ruthless military innovator who embraced firearms introduced by Portuguese traders and used them to devastating effect against traditional samurai cavalry. His successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, rose from peasant origins to become one of Japan's most powerful rulers, proving that in this chaotic age, talent could sometimes trump birth. Finally, Tokugawa Ieyasu consolidated power after the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, establishing the Tokugawa shogunate that would rule Japan for the next 2.5 centuries. The Tokugawa period, also known as the Edo period, was one of peace and isolation. With no more wars to fight, the samurai transformed once again. They became bureaucrats and administrators in a highly structured society. Their swords were now ceremonial rather than practical. They practiced their martial arts not for battle, but for spiritual discipline and preservation of tradition. This was the era when many of the samurai traditions we recognize today were codified, and refined tea ceremony, flower arrangement, calligraphy, and elaborate codes of etiquette. Yet even in peacetime, the samurai's relationship with death remained central to their identity. The ritual suicide known as seppuku embodied the samurai's ultimate devotion to honor. When a samurai failed in his duty or brought shame upon himself or his lord, he could restore his honor through this excruciating ritual. Kneeling formally, he would use a short blade to cut his abdomen while a trusted assistant stood ready to decapitate him, sparing him prolonged agony. To modern sensibilities, this seems barbaric, but to the samurai, it was the ultimate expression of control, dignity, and responsibility. Among the most famous samurai was Miyamoto Musashi, a legendary swordsman who lived in the early 17th century. Musashi won his first duel at age 13 and went on to fight over 60 duels without defeat. But he was more than a warrior. He was a philosopher and artist who wrote the Book of Five Rings, a treatise on strategy and martial arts that is still studied today. Musashi understood that mastery of the sword required mastery of the mind. His life exemplified the samurai ideal, complete dedication to perfection in his chosen path. Another legendary figure was the female samurai Tomoe Gozen, who fought in the Genpei War. Historical accounts describe her as an exceptional warrior, skilled with both bow and sword, capable of defeating the strongest opponents. While female samurai were rare, they were not unknown. Women from samurai families were trained to defend their homes and were expected to embody the same virtues of courage and loyalty as their male counterparts. They sometimes fought alongside men in battle and were respected for their martial prowess. The samurai also had a complex relationship with other social classes in Japan. Officially, they stood at the top of the social hierarchy, above farmers, artisans, and merchants. In practice, their power depended on the agricultural production of peasants and the economic activities of merchants. During the long peace of the Edo period, many samurai found themselves in financial difficulty, as their fixed stipends lost value while merchant wealth grew. This created tension and sometimes resentment, as warriors who once ruled battlefields found themselves indebted to the merchants. They theoretically outranked. The end of the samurai era came suddenly and dramatically in the 19th century. In 1853, American Commodore Matthew Perry arrived with his black ships, forcing Japan to open its ports to foreign trade. The shock of confronting Western military technology and the subsequent political crisis led to the collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate. In 1868, power was restored to the emperor in what became known as the Meiji Restoration. The new government, determined to modernize Japan rapidly to compete with Western powers, systematically dismantled the samurai class. In 1876, the government banned the wearing of swords in public. For samurai, who had worn their blades as symbols of their identity for centuries, this was a devastating blow. Many samurai rebelled against the modernization policies, most famously in the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, led by Seigo Takamori, one of the architects of the Meiji Restoration, who had become disillusioned with the new order. The rebellion was crushed by a conscript army equipped with modern weapons, symbolically ending the age of the samurai. Seigo himself died in battle, becoming a tragic hero who represented the old virtues in a changing world. Yet the samurai did not truly disappear. Their values, their aesthetic, and their code of honor became foundational elements of modern Japanese identity. The concept of dedication to one's work, the emphasis on discipline and self-improvement, the respect for hierarchy and duty, these legacies of Bushido continue to influence Japanese culture today. Former samurai and their descendants became leaders in Japan's rapid modernization, bringing their organizational skills and dedication to new fields like education, industry, and government. The global fascination with samurai has only grown over time. In film, literature, and popular culture around the world, the samurai represents an ideal of the warrior philosopher, someone who combines deadly skill with moral depth and cultural sophistication. From Akira Kurosawa's magnificent films to countless books and video games, the samurai continues to captivate audiences with a vision of honor, discipline, and dedication to a code that transcends individual survival. When we look back at the samurai today, we see not just warriors, but a complex tradition that evolved over 1,000 years. We see men and women who lived by principles they considered more important than life itself, who cultivated both the violent arts of war and the refined arts of peace, who could be both ruthlessly pragmatic and idealistic to the point of self-destruct. Their legacy reminds us that human societies can create codes of honor and systems of meaning that elevate individuals beyond mere self-interest. For better and for worse, the samurai are gone, their swords sheathed forever, their distinctive top knots and armor relegated to museums. But their spirit, the dedication to excellence, the acceptance of responsibility, the willingness to sacrifice for a greater cause continues to resonate across cultures and centuries. In a world that often seems chaotic and unprincipled, the samurai offer a vision of order and honor that continues to inspire us. Even as we recognize the contradictions and the costs that such a rigid code demanded from those who lived by it, the samurai's influence extended far beyond the battlefield and into the very fabric of Japanese artistic and spiritual life. Their patronage and practice shaped some of Japan's most refined cultural traditions, creating a legacy that would outlast their political power by centuries. The tea ceremony, or chanoyu, became deeply intertwined with samurai culture during the 16th century. What began as a simple act of drinking tea evolved into a profound spiritual practice. Under the guidance of masters like Senno Rikyu, for the samurai, the tea ceremony offered a sanctuary from the chaos of war, a space where even the most hardened warrior could contemplate beauty, simplicity, and the fleeting nature of existence. The tea room was one of the few places where rank meant nothing. A daimyo and his retainer could meet as equals, united in the appreciation of a perfectly whisked bowl of matcha. The principles of the tea ceremony, harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, provided a counterbalance to the violence that defined so much of samurai life. Zen Buddhism profoundly shaped samurai philosophy and practice. Zen temples became centers of samurai education, where young warriors learned not just martial skills but meditation, philosophy, and the arts. The Zen concept of mushin, or no mind, taught samurai to act without hesitation or conscious thought, allowing instinct and training to guide their movements in combat. This state of heightened awareness, yet mental emptiness, became the ideal for swordsmanship. A samurai who could achieve mushin would respond to threats with perfect economy of motion, without fear clouding his judgment or desire distorting his perception. Many of the greatest sword masters were also devoted Zen practitioners, understanding that true mastery of the blade required mastery of the self. The relationship between samurai and their lords was not always one of blind obedience, despite what the idealized version of Bushido might suggest. History is filled with examples of samurai who changed sides, betrayed their masters, or acted out of self-interest. The most famous example might be the 47 Ronin, masterless samurai who spent years planning revenge for their lord's forced suicide. In 1703, they attacked the mansion of the official responsible for their master's death, killed him, and then turned themselves in. They were ordered to commit seppuku, which they did, becoming legendary heroes who embodied the ultimate loyalty. Yet this very story reveals the tension at the heart of samurai culture. They broke the law and disrupted social order in the name of a higher principle of loyalty and honor. Samurai castles stand as magnificent testaments to both their military ingenuity and aesthetic sensibility. Unlike European castles, Japanese castles were designed as much for elegance as for defense. Heian Castle, often called the White Heron Castle for its brilliant white exterior and graceful form, is perhaps the most beautiful example. Its complex defensive systems included multiple baileys, concealed gates, dead-end passages designed to confuse attackers, and strategic openings from which defenders could rain arrows and stones upon invaders. Yet for all its military sophistication, the castle is also a work of art. Its curved roof lines and white walls creating a structure of breathtaking beauty. The synthesis of function and aesthetics perfectly embodied the samurai ideal. As Japan modernized in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the samurai spirit was deliberately channeled into new forms. The concept of Bushido was revived and reinterpreted to serve nationalist purposes, sometimes distorted beyond recognition from its historical complexity. During World War II, the Japanese military invoked samurai traditions to inspire soldiers and justify kamikaze attacks, claiming these suicide missions represented the ultimate expression of samurai devotion. This appropriation of samurai culture for militaristic propaganda has complicated the legacy of the samurai, reminding us that traditions can be manipulated to serve very different purposes than their original practitioners might have intended. In the decades since World War II, Japan has grappled with its samurai heritage in more nuanced ways. The samurai have become symbols of a pre-modern Japan that was both admirable and problematic, a society of high culture and rigid hierarchy, of noble ideals and brutal realities. Modern martial arts like kendo, judo, and aikido preserve some of the physical disciplines of the samurai, while emphasizing their spiritual and ethical dimensions. Practitioners around the world study these arts not to become warriors, but to cultivate focus, respect, and self-improvement. In this way, the samurai tradition continues to evolve, adapted to peaceful purposes while maintaining its core emphasis on discipline and personal development. The samurai's story is ultimately a human story of people trying to live by ideals in an imperfect world, of the constant tension between duty and desire, between the demands of honor and the instinct for survival. They created a culture of extraordinary beauty and terrible violence, of selfless devotion and ruthless ambition. Their legacy challenges us to consider what principles we hold sacred, what we would sacrifice for, and how we balance the competing demands of loyalty, honor, and humanity. In the end, perhaps that is why the samurai continue to fascinate us, not because they were perfect, but because in their struggles and contradictions, we recognize something profoundly and eternally human. History remembers conquerors, but it never forgets legends. Subscribe to XL History, because the past is closer than you think.